Good evening, everyone. So let's call to order the Development Review Commission meeting for April 7th, 2025. Admin, please call the roll.
Chair Lindstrom,
Present.
Vice Chair Leake,
Present.
Commissioner Dews,
Here.
Commissioner Bates,
Here.
Commissioner O'Connor,
Here.
Commissioner Mino,
Here.
Commissioner Sangri,
Here.
and Councilor John Wendland.
Thank you. Before we move into item number 3, are there any changes to the agenda that we need to address first? Seeing none. Okay, let's move into item number 3. I see City Councilor John Wendland has joined us this evening, so let's invite him up to give a general city update. Thank you for being here, Councilor Wendland.
On. Is it on now? Yes? Oh, yay. I'm still red. Do I get my 30 seconds? No, I'm just kidding. Thanks, everybody, for putting up with me for a few minutes. I just wanted to let you know that from the perspective of the City Council, you guys have been doing stellar work. We appreciate all the things that you're doing, and we had, I think, one appeal so far this year, so you're doing okay, but we'd like 0. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, it's the work that you do is wonderful, and it helps the council in many ways in dealing with policy and dealing with what is going on in Lake Oswego, and we all volunteer for all of both City Council and the boards and commissions, and I think it's what makes Lake Oswego the kind of city that we are and how wonderful we operate is because we've got super bright people helping and assisting and helping to make life in Lake Oswego wonderful. Now, if you say no, sometimes people don't think it's so wonderful based on some of your decisions and sometimes on City Council decisions, but for the most part, I think we work really well, and I appreciate it. Couple updates. I didn't know if you knew, but we are right in the middle of National Library Week, and that started the 6th of April, and it also coincides with our LO Reads 2025, and the book, which I had in my briefcase, which I didn't bring in, is How to Read a Book, which for those that don't know, I think there's close to 1,250 books that are distributed, and they're taken, and it's all are taken, and you have to get your copy soon. And we have lots and lots of people in Lake Oswego each year reading the same book, and then there's all kinds of activities during this month and next month about LO Reads. So if you want to know anything about it, go on to our website, and it can fill you in. We had a couple study sessions, and I'll go through the last couple meetings fairly quickly, and if you've got questions, let me know. One of the study sessions was on the enforcement of right-of-ways and the vegetation program, and this is something that came before council as far as something we need to deal with and set policy, and this is kind of interesting because it affects almost every part of town equally because we have right-of-ways all throughout the city of Lake Oswego. And one of the problems that we have is oftentimes people move in, and over the 20, 25 years that they live there, they plant trees, they hedges, put fences, different things, not knowing necessarily that there's a city right-of-way. They may have known when they bought the house and they looked at the plan, but after that, you sign for your house and you get going. Most of the time, they forget about those things. And sometimes we have issues where we have safety issues in traffic situations where people can't turn because you can't see, or hedges that just get completely out of whack, or trees that have overgrown and so on. And so we also have not just safety, but also what I would call sort of over encroachment by design, which is people going, I can add to my lot and add some things into my yard, or out in front of my house, I can put a whole bunch of rocks out in front so nobody will park in front of my house. And so we had a study session to discuss those issues, and we're working on trying to give the some direction, and the engineering department is going to be working on some policy, which eventually some of it may reach you as time goes on. We have had wonderful results. We have an engineer that's dedicated part-time to this, and they sent out a number of notices, and they had an 85% positive feedback, take care of it. So, which is very encouraging. Not all cities have that. Another thing that we talked about were home occupation standards. Many people are professionals in Lake Oswego and have businesses in their home. Some people have expanded their home businesses to outside, things like having a pool party app that you can invite 25 people every hour on the hour to your pool and have congestion and so on in your neighborhood, or running a warehouse with big, huge trucks in and out of your house, and lots of different issues that are up. For the most part, we looked at that subject matter as making sure that we kept the neighborhood feel, and that's been somewhat of the overarching direction, but staff has asked for some additional clarity. So it's hard sometimes for an enforcement officer to make the decision of just what is residential feel. So we're going to be working on that. Some of you may have been reading about Foothills Development, which is right down by the park and in the industrial area down there. We started a process, and this is the very beginning of the process of looking at Foothills as a possible development area, which is something, for those of you who've been around Lake Oswego forever and ever, we went through this before, around the early 2010, 28. There was talk about developing the Foothills area, and there was talk about bringing in a trolley, streetcar. There's all kinds of different topics on it. What did happen is that it went away as far as a subject when the council was, I think, elected in around 2010, 2012, somewhere around there. But with the change of our sewer treatment plant, which we're still in the formation of developing, it will give us an opportunity to create a new space for Lake Oswego, or not new space, but new use of the space by taking the current, some of the industrial park down there, as well as the space that the current water treatment plant sits on, and gives us an opportunity to maybe create a housing, business, all kinds of different things that we can dream about. And this is a long-term process. All of our terms will be fully exhausted by the time it gets built, but it will be something to look at and something that Lake Oswego will be moving forward with. So that will be in the dialogue for the next several years. But we're going to start some task force and some community inputs to get some direction on where we're going on that. The last item is budget. We're starting the budget cycle. We run a 2-year fiscal budget cycle in Lake Oswego, meaning that we do it once every 2 years, still having a yearly budget allocated over the 2 years. But to go through the process, because generally our budget is almost the same every year, because we pretty much have the same programs. It's not like you add a police department or subtract a fire department. Everyone kind of sticks in place. it's fairly predictable, and our revenue base is fairly predictable because the majority is through property taxes, which get bumped up every year that you know when you pay your taxes by about 3%. And so it's fairly stable. So it saves a lot of money, and also it gives us some predictability on creating a budget for 2 years. So we're going through that process, and we'll be finishing that up probably in the May timeframe. No major changes to it, a few reallocations here and there, and as we get into more detail, we'll let you know. And I think that is it of what's happening in City Council. So, oh, the lake. You might have wanted to know about the lake. The lake is open. As the decree from the judge said, the lake is now open, and so we're looking at creating some park rules around access points, and that's going to be happening by April 15th, which is the deadline that we set for ourselves. And that'll be more of an administrative decision-making process, and then as time goes on, we'll probably make revisions as time goes on, but we need to get something in there quickly, especially after this last weekend. There's probably, if you've been on social media or different things, you've seen lots of interesting activity things happening on the lake that probably won't be included in the rules, so on access. So anyway, that I won't get into all the details, but it was just a kind of a different, it's kind of like the lake is open, so let's see what happens. So we'll get some park rules in there that help both the current shareholders of the lake as well as the public and get a good balance. So that's what we're after. So, questions?
Thank you, Councilor. Is anybody questions? Questions? As far as the access point, is the only access point discussed down there by the theater? Or is there
Yes.
another public access point?
No, there won't be another public access.
Okay.
Under this lawsuit, it was narrowed down to 3 areas: Sunderleaf Park, kind of the railroad track, and Millennium Park. And this is the land that actually touches the edge of the lake, and so that created the access point. It's about a 12 or 15-foot narrow piece of access. So,
Understood. Thank you.
great. Geez, I got off early, really easy today. So, hey, thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Councilor.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving into item number 4. This will be discussing the minutes for March 17th, 2025. Has everyone had a moment to review the minutes? Are there any comments or changes needed? Hearing none.
I have reviewed the minutes in detail and would recommend their approval. I move that recommendation.
Thank you.
I would second that motion.
Admin, can you call the roll?
Sangre,
Aye.
O'Connor,
Abstain.
Dews,
Aye.
Bates, Leek,
Aye.
Mino,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
6-0.
Thank you. Okay, well, next on the agenda, we'll be moving into the public hearing. This will be for LU 24-003. This is a request for approval of a lot line adjustment between platted lots 12 and 13 of Block 34, First Edition, to the town of Oswego. A development review permit for the construction of a quadplex located in Downtown Redevelopment Design District, also known as DRDD. Design variance to reduce the rear yard setbacks for existing dwellings from 20 feet to 3.7 feet, and for the proposed quadplex from 10 feet to 5 feet, and removal of 1 tree. The site is located at 547 5th Street. The coordinator is Ellen Davis, the senior planner. And can city attorney Osanak please state the meeting procedures to the public?
Thank you, Chair Lindstrom and members of the committee. My name is Ellen Osanak. I'm your city attorney. And I saw the proceeding from last time where Evan Boone told you that he was retiring and that there would be a new person, a new face that would be filling in for a little while, and that is me. So I'm happy to meet you all. And just a little bit of comfort maybe to give you, I've been an attorney for many, many years. I've been your city attorney for 2 years now. But in that time, I've actually never attended or been your city attorney for a DRC hearing. And so I think the way that I introduce the meetings is a little bit different than the way Evan did. So for those of you that are used to Mr. Boone, this may be slightly different. And so I thought I would prepare you for that. But it's very nice to be with all of you. All right, so as your chair said, now is the time set for a public hearing on LU 24-0033 for all of the it's an application requesting approval for all of the items that your chair just described. This is a legislative decision, which is a policy decision that's in your discretion, but of course you all know that you have to follow the criteria, and those criteria are outlined in the staff report. Well, Joanne has reminded me this is actually a quasi-judicial hearing here today, not a legislative hearing. So that makes much more sense why she was saying, well, aren't you going to ask them to declare their ex parte contacts and conflicts of interest? And I said, well, no, it's a legislative hearing. So there we go. Thank you, Ms. Hasty. All right, so, but I will at least describe for the public. Most of you all know these procedures, but I'll describe them anyway. We're going to have a presentation by staff, Ms. Davis. We're going to receive testimony from the public. Individuals are allowed up to 5 minutes. Recognized neighborhood associations, homeowner associations, government agencies, or other incorporated public interest organizations are allowed up to 10 minutes. Time limits do not include any time taken up by questions from the commission or responses to such questions, and any person in attendance may give or cede his or her time for testimony to another person, but in no case shall any person's testimony be increased to greater than 10 minutes. So I'll ask members of the commission whether or not you have any financial conflicts of interest and whether or not you've had any ex parte or site visits to this particular location. And I'll just wait, and I guess we can start here. And if you need to declare, please just raise your hand and do so.
Hi, my name is Yuko Mino, and I'm an architect. I know of the project site, but have not gone there in relation to this project. I do not know the parties involved, nor do I have any ex parte communication. I do not have a financial interest or a conflict of interest in this case, and I do not have a bias. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
My name is Dwight Sangre. I'm a retired civil engineer. I have not visited the site. I have not had any ex parte discussions regarding this project. I have no financial or professional interest with any of the parties involved and do not consider that I have any bias.
Hi, I'm Helen Leake. I'm a realtor. I haven't visited the site, but I kind of know where it is. I do not know the parties involved. I have not had any ex parte communication. I have no financial interests, and I have no bias.
Hello, my name is Larry Lindstrom. I'm a construction executive. I have not visited the site, but I do know where it is. I've had no ex parte communications. I do not know the parties involved. I do not have a financial or conflict of interest in this case, and I do not have a bias.
Good evening. I'm Russ O'Connor. I'm a retired senior project manager. I'm aware of the site. No, I have no ex parte contact, no bias, no conflict of interest, and no financial conflict.
I'm John Dews, and I am a retired architect, and I have not visited the site. I have not had any ex parte contacts. I have no financial interest or conflict of interest, and no bias.
My name is Kristen Bates. I'm a real estate attorney. I know where the site is. I have not visited the site. I've had no ex parte contact. I do not have any financial interest, and I have no bias.
All right, I think hearing all of that, we're ready for the staff report, unless I've missed something. Oh, all right, thank you. Joanna informs I need to make sure that there's no challenges to the declarations from the commission. Seeing none, now I think we're ready for the staff report. All right, thank you, Ms. Davis.
Okay. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Ellen Davis. I'm a senior planner for the City of Lake Oswego. And tonight, we are going to be talking about 547 5th Street, which hopefully my clicker is going to work. Maybe not. I might have to steal from the public testimony table. Thank you, Kat. No, no. Well, I will be talking at some point about 547 5th Street, which is, there we go. I can just say next slide if you want.
Is that gonna connect?
Thanks. Well, this works too. So this is right up the street over, just up from Safeway. This is located in the R2 zoning district and in the Downtown Redevelopment Design District overlay, which I'm just going to call DRDD for the rest of the night. It's a bit of a mouthful. So this site has 4 parts of our land use application proposed tonight, and I'm going to go through each of these 4 components in order. So the very first thing to know about this site is that this is actually, it looks like one property when you walk by the site today. It's actually platted as 2 lots back in 1892, 1893, when that whole area was first platted. And so this is lots 12 and 13 with a dashed line running through the existing home on the site. So the first thing we're going to talk about is a lot line adjustment. And that proposal takes that dashed line that goes through the middle of the site and moves it to where that solid line you can see here. This is the adjusted property line to curve around the existing house and carve out a new lot back here for development, as opposed to having kind of a piece that you can't really do anything with over here. So the lot line adjustment does meet the minimum lot sizes for the zone, the dimensional standards, except that I will discuss a variance request for the existing house for the rear yard setback, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So the lot line adjustment meets all of the minimum lot size, the density requirements, things like that. Lot line adjustment meets the criteria for approval. Staff recommends approval. Our next step is going to be looking at the adjusted lot in the proposed quadplex. So I've got the adjusted lot boundaries kind of highlighted in orange here. So it is a little bit of a funny shape, but the main buildable area is going to be behind the existing structure, closer to the public alley. And this quadplex that you see right here, it meets all of those setbacks, height limitations, maximum lot coverage for this site, except for there's also a variance request to the rear yard setback for this property as well. And I'll talk about both of those design variances together in just a minute. But so this quadplex is meeting all of its dimensional requirements, including massing, size, that kind of thing. But in the DRDD, we also have very specific requirements for aesthetics, trying to make sure that the project matches a Lake Oswego style. And so this proposal is an arts and crafts style. And the elements of the arts and crafts style you can see on the proposed quadplex are going to be steeply pitched gable roofs, multi-paned windows, mixed siding materials, including brick, which is required to be the majority of the ground floor. It needs to be a masonry or kind of stone type of siding down there. So we've got that brick siding on the ground floor as required in this overlay. And then we've also got a combination of shingle and horizontal siding and half timbering on the front entry porches. And these elements all add up to a design that complies with the applicable DRDD style and aesthetic standards that are required. So staff does recommend approval of this DR permit for the quadplex, since it complies with all of those standards. Now getting into the promised design variances. So we have 2 different design variances. One is to reduce the rear setback for the existing dwelling for that lot line adjustment to carve out a second buildable lot. And this proposal is a bit of a variable setback reduction. So there's one point, it's 8 feet wide on the existing structure, that's only 3.7 feet to the new property line. The whole rest of the structure length is going to be 7 feet from that new property line. And this is a proposal to keep the existing walls of the existing dwelling without knocking any walls down. This doesn't approve any future development on the site to be located at this location. So if the existing house was torn down, a new house was proposed, or if an addition was proposed, it would need to meet the 20-foot rear yard setback for a detached single-family structure, or it would have to apply for another variance. So this isn't giving blanket approval, it's just approving what is currently on the site so that that house can remain intact without any modifications. For the quadplex that's proposed, there is a request to reduce the 10-foot rear yard setback. It's a different setback for a single-family house versus a quadplex in the R2 zone. So that's the reason they're two different setbacks. But the quadplex would have a 10-foot rear yard setback. In this case, the applicant is requesting a 5-foot rear yard setback. And let's look at the criteria that we judge these requests by. So the first criteria has 2 routes to get to approval. One route is looking at physical circumstances of the site and looking at if following the standard as stated in the code, meeting those setbacks, is not practicable due to the physical characteristics of the site or the existing structure, or an alternative design will better accomplish the purposes, goals, or objectives of the base district and any adopted plan or overlay for the applicable property. And in this case, the applicant shows compliance with both of these criteria. So for the physical circumstances, in this case, the design variances requested to both rear yard setbacks involve retaining 2 52-inch Douglas fir trees that you can see on the left side of the screen and retaining the existing structure. So those are both existing physical circumstances on the site, and those are also better achieving the intents and purposes of the neighborhood plan, because the neighborhood plan for first edition encourages retaining mature trees and retaining the existing housing stock as much as possible. So that is in keeping with the neighborhood plan. And it's also in keeping with the R2 zone purposes by allowing development of residential use behind this existing structure. So it's really hitting both the neighborhood plan and the R2 zone purposes, as well as retaining existing mature Douglas fir trees in the existing house on the lot. So then the only other criteria that is applicable for a design variance, in this case, the applicant has chosen to demonstrate compliance with exceptional quality of detailing, appearance, and materials for both the existing structure and the proposed quadplex. So as we discussed before, the materials for the proposed quadplex align with the allowed materials and do not violate the prohibited materials allowed in this downtown redevelopment overlay district. And the existing structure is a 1940s dwelling that, you know, I think we're all familiar with kind of the construction of older homes. So staff does find that both of these structures do meet that high quality of appearance, detailing, and materials. So staff recommends approval of both variances since those criteria are met. And the very last piece of this 4-part application is the tree removal. So there is a request to remove a 21 diameter at breast height, 21-inch English walnut tree. And just to throw you off and make sure you're paying attention, this map is a little confusing. The north is to the right, so 5th Street's at the top and the alley is at the back. The tree proposed for removal is closer to the alley, and it's located within the footprint of the proposed quadplex. This tree has been heavily topped in the past. It's had a lot of very severe pruning due to these overhead utility lines you can see running along the alley. So at least a couple, like a week or 2 or 3 ago, whenever I took this for the staff report, you could kind of hardly even see it. It's not very visible, and it's not visible from 5th Street since it's actually blocked by the existing house that's going to remain. So this tree is barely visible from off-site. When we're looking at a significant tree in our tree code, which I know this commission is familiar with our significant tree criteria, this tree proposed for removal does not meet the criteria to be considered a significant tree, and nor does its removal lead to significant negative impacts in those other criteria you see in LOC 5502-080. So staff does find that the criteria for removal are met with this proposal. There is a mitigation tree that is proposed. You can see it located here on this plan. It's proposed to be a Persian ironwood, which would meet our requirements. So staff recommends approval. All 4 components of the application do meet the applicable criteria. And I would like to mention that I mentioned in Friday's memo that I sent out before the weekend that the neighborhood plan for this area actually discourages curbs. So I'm recommending we remove the terms curb from condition C5A and remove condition C5G. These are conditions related to public improvements that are required to be constructed with this development. And the curb was kind of referred to in there, but there is a different standard for how the edge of the roadway is treated in this area. So the public improvement plans, when they're submitted for review, will be reviewed and designed to meet the design standards for this area and kind of match what's existing on site. So that is the one change there. I would also like to mention that we did receive an additional exhibit into the record today, right before the noon deadline, and that is exhibit G003. This comment brings up a request that came up also in exhibit G002 that I discussed in Friday's memo. And these are kind of ideas around like keeping an existing hedge or some sort of screening for this project. Exhibit G002 talked about the south property line, and this new exhibit, G003, talks about the north property line. And so if the commission finds that screening is an appropriate condition of approval for this land use, then staff would recommend that you apply it to both the north and the south property line, since that is a concern that's come up from both abutting property owners. And staff would recommend a 6-foot site obscuring fence is a more common screening measure that doesn't require kind of ongoing maintenance and pruning and things like that. So that is up for debate for this commission, but you can impose conditions of approval if they're related to decreasing an impact from the proposed development. So if you do find that that is necessary, then please just mention that in your deliberations, but do keep in mind that if that's something you want to explore, you could explore it for both property lines, since that came up in 2 different comments. And that is it for my presentation. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Any questions, commissioners? None. That last statement you had, you said a 6-foot screen. What? I'm sorry. What?
6-foot site obscuring fence is required in certain situations and elsewhere in our development code. So that's typically you see the 6-foot wooden fence, I think is the most common that you see around here.
Understood. Thank you. I was thinking that was part of the tree protection.
Yeah, the tree protection fence was actually mentioned in Exhibit G003 that came in today. Tree protection fencing or erosion control methods are all temporary and only during construction. And both of the comments seemed to look for something that was a bit longer term, more permanent.
Understood. No comments? No questions? Okay, so we can move into the public hearing portion. Would you like me to, I guess I can talk about the testimony portion. So the yellow light will recommend means 30 seconds. Red light means time up. You'll have a timer sitting here on the table. A flashing red light means you've gone 30 seconds or more over the limit. Applicant speaking will have 20 minutes. The application's party, that would be everybody involved with that applicant, excuse me. And then after applicant's done, those in favor will have 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, or I think it's 5 minutes each. Speak in favor. Those in opposition will then speak. They have a 5 minutes. And then those neither for or against will have 5 minutes. Then there'll be a rebuttal by the applicant if they want to speak on behalf or in rebuttal against the nays. And then from there, we will move into our discussion as a commission here. So I'd like to invite up the applicants to take the table. Please introduce yourself, and the table will be yours.
Is it working, Kat? Okay, we'll find out. Well, is it, you got to put mine up there, though. There we go. Yay, it's working. Hello, good evening. My name is Danelle Eisenhart. I'm here representing the applicant team. I'm the applicant representative, and I will give a short presentation. Thank you, Ellen, for a thorough presentation on the proposed development and the code requirements. First, just a quick little note about the background on the project. We did have our first neighborhood meeting back in July of 2024. That was the required meeting. And we heard the neighborhood. This is not what you're seeing. It was a different plan. They wanted some trees retained and the house. So the applicant pivoted, and what you're seeing today is the change. And we are retaining those two large trees, trees 1 and 2, and the existing house, and the quadplex has been moved to the back, hence the design review variances that we're requesting. So we had a second neighborhood meeting to show it to the neighborhood, and that was much better received. So here we are tonight with this. And then, so here's that site plan again that Ellen showed, and it shows the 2 trees up front. Let's see if I can remember how to use this. 1 and 2 to be retained, the existing house to be retained. We are retaining 2 of the 3 existing street trees as well. 1 has to be removed. It's down here for water meters to go in. And then the new quadplex with the mitigation tree, like Ellen noted. And then Ellen did show these, but we'll have them up here for questions if you need to. But 3D renderings are great for seeing the materials for the proposed quadplex. This is the front elevation that would be facing 5th, kind of the rear of the house. And then the rear. And again, I think in the staff report, the reason for this rear yard setback is we found this in Portland. You either have a 5-foot setback or an 18 because people like to park there if it's in between, and then they're sticking out in the alley. So that's why we've asked for the 5 more so, because then hopefully nobody parks there and sticks out in the alley. Then this is a picture of the rear of the house. The neighborhood had asked to see what that nook looked like that's being retained. The whole house is being retained, so this is just a view because you can't see it from the street. And I wanted to get it in the record because they had asked to see it, and it had been sent to them. But just to kind of show you what the rear of the house looks like, because you can't see this from the street or from the alley because of the trees and the fences. And for the shrubs or the hedges, that discussion on both sides, let's see if I can point. We don't have the utility plan, but the shrubs couldn't be retained on either side because of utilities that have to come through. So on the south side, the shrub is kind of in this area here. And the new sanitary lateral to the house has to come through there because currently it's somewhere here. And then on the north hedge, we have to bring some utilities into the house, gas and electric, and the storm facility goes in here, and that hedge comes down quite a bit. So the hedges wouldn't have to be able to stay. So a fence, if the commission decides, would be how we would go. Any questions from the applicant team? We have our whole team here, so if you have questions, we're here.
I have a few questions. As an architect, I'm always concerned about the fire resistance measures that's been taken, especially since the 2 buildings, the existing house and the new development are so close together. I was just wondering how far does the rear porch protrude out to the new property line on the, I guess it would be the west side?
Oh, the rear porch to the existing house?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's, Porch to the rear of the house?
The rear porch is on the new development. I was wondering, like, how close it is to the new property line on the east side.
This rear porch?
You know how there's, like, entrances
Oh,
on.
these?
Yeah, yeah.
These,
yeah.
Nick, do you know how far the overhangs are from? 7 feet. Huh? 7 feet.
Okay.
So,
All right.
so we would still have building separation for fire.
Okay.
Being more than 6 feet between the structures.
And were there any solar design standards that you needed to meet?
Solar? I don't think so.
Like solar access?
Those were complied with
They weren't applicable.
or
in
not
R2.
applicable. I think those
Okay.
are not applicable for a quadplex development type. Those apply to single family.
I think that's correct in the R2 zone. If you give us a minute, we will look that up.
That's all I had.
Okay. Other questions?
The line, the property line, there's not a fence on that, is that correct, between the quadplex and the house?
Not currently, but here, I'll show you. You can kind of see this darker line. That is probably a proposed fence that will happen, and you can kind of see it in the renderings here. Go forward, see that fence.
Yeah, I couldn't
So-
tell from there if that
Yeah, it
continued
wraps. Yeah, it
down to
does
the
wrap.
south. So if you go back to that previous, it seems like the concrete steps that come out of that house, existing house, are going to be running right into that fence.
Yeah, the rear steps are gonna have to get redone.
They're going to change that.
Yeah, you want the picture, probably. Those steps do stick out further than the nook. Yeah,
Yes.
they're gonna have to get turned or shortened or something.
Okay. And then going back to the plan.
Site plan?
Yes, so you talked about an issue in the alleyways where people park. In this case, I guess it would be between the walkways or the stairs that come down from the back of the house, the quads.
No, so there's a driveway, right? There's a garage. Here, So what we find in Portland is, the standard in Portland is 5 feet or 18 feet, because in 5 feet, people don't try to park a car in front of the garage because it's too short. They know they'll stick out. If you have a 10-foot, they'll park there, but most cars don't fit in 10 feet.
Don't fit in that, definitely don't fit in.
So 5 feet is, unless they have a smart car, they're not going to fit there.
So the area where the grass is that looks like it may have concrete strips in it,
Oh, that's the walkway to the back door.
is it concrete?
I guess.
So is there going to be, I'm just looking at the long-term approach here.
Sure.
It seems like a homeowner might say, well, I can park behind my garage door and I can park on that concrete parallel to the
one, yeah,
the
I
road.
suppose.
Well, I wasn't going that far. But anyway, I hope that the quadplex takes that in consideration with the homeowners so that we don't end up in that situation. Not anything for this meeting.
No.
Just to jump back in with the question about solar access, for the maximum shade point height standard, it does not apply to middle housing in the R2 zone, so.
Any other questions?
Any more comments or questions?
You have seen, as we have the comments from the public about the fencing on the north and the south side of the lot. And I am asking the question primarily to get your anticipated plan, are you anticipating that you will be putting a screen fence in there?
Yeah, so I'll go back to that. I'm going the wrong way. Yeah, the plan shows, this site plan shows a fence. It's kind of hard to see on here, but that dark line up here is a fence. It does cut off here because of the big trees, but and gates there at the walkway is kind of the plan right now, and then goes around the to the south behind the house. There's already a fence here.
Right.
That hedge that this property to the south is talking about is along where this quadplex would be. So
Thank you very much.
So sorry to piggyback on that, Senior Planner Davis did say you could consider a condition of approval. What she was noting was, obviously a lot of times fences are voluntary. If you wanted to consider an imposition to condition the fence, I think what we're hearing from the public is a site obscuring fence, which is a particular sort of construction, would be considered, would be.
Yeah, that was why I asked the question.
Got it, thank you.
Any more questions? And then, so hearing none, I think we'll move into the non-applicant testimonies or speaking. So we have one speaking in support. So the order of this will be those in favor. From there, it'll be those in opposition, and then finally those neither or against. So first off, we will have in support Carol Ockert. Apologies if I butchered that. Please introduce yourself, and then you have 5 minutes.
And I'm speaking as the land use liaison for Fan Forest Hills Neighborhood Association, so I don't know if you want to, I mean, I'm not going to be that long, but are you limiting that to 5 or whatever?
Yeah, we have that changed to 10. Yeah,
Okay.
Thanks, Carol, appreciate
All right, but either way, I won't be long. That's fine. So thank you very much. Starting by saying the tree double lot, 547 Fifth, with the gracious 1940s home, is an eye stopper for the street. It's an iconic first edition look. And the developer has come up with a very creative development plan for apportioning the lot, saving the trees, saving an iconic home, and adding density to an area of our neighborhood zoned for high density for many years. And as Danelle, the representative for the developer, noted, this is not the plan that the developer started with. The applicant, the developer, worked hard to communicate well with the surrounding neighbors and also the neighborhood association. And at the first neighborhood meeting, they really listened to the feedback that they got. And behind closed doors, they worked on it, and then they reached out, contacted the neighborhood association, and said that they wanted to do another neighborhood meeting. They didn't have to do that, but they chose to. So we scheduled another neighborhood meeting. Both neighborhood meetings were very well attended, and people spoke. They did participate. So the applicant heard and responded to concerns over the site and the trees. The Neighborhood Association Board has spent time to examine this application during several board meetings, most recently on our first Wednesday this month. And we spent the time that also included other residents who attended and participated in the discussions. We take setback reductions very seriously in Fan Forest Hills. We are small lots, dense neighborhood, so we really pay attention when there is a request for a variance to a setback. And this developer is asking for large setback reductions. We've reached board consensus that both variance requests are necessary to deliver this excellent outcome for the neighborhood. Both variance requests meet the design variance code as noted by staff in the staff report. But I want to note that it is important that the variance reduction for the rear yard setback for the single-family home to 3.5 feet only applies to that nook. That was very important for us to be sure that that was the way it would be applied. And so we saw that as a reasonable ask to allow this existing original element of this old home to remain. That would be a real asset if whoever owns that home at some point wanted to look at putting it on the Lake Oswego landmark list. So we really saw that as an asset. And the remainder of the back of the home has that 7-foot setback variance ask. And though that still seems like a large ask from the required 20 feet, that standard in the zone is for a single-family zone, but in this case, it's necessary for the overall design that's allowing for more dense development, as was intended in this area in first edition for many, many years. So if you look at the fact that there are very few single-family homes being retained in that area, that 20-foot setback is not what you're going to see retained over time. And in fact, one can see that that difference is to promote and allow for that higher density. So I want to add an anecdotal piece of information. The developers noted that the reduction of the rear yard setback for the quadplex of down to 5 feet from the alley actually improves alley safety and use by preventing parking of cars jutting out into the alley. I walked the alley today, and 2 properties up from this site, there was a car parked parallel to the alley in the rear yard setback, much as you were asking about earlier. Now, I don't actually carry a measuring tape with me when I go out for a walk, but knowing I was coming here tonight, I went home, got my measuring tape, went back, and actually measured the rear yard setback and the size of that car. And the car was right up against, parallel against the edge of the garage of this particular duplex. And the setback that had been left was 10 feet. And the car protruded out 7.5 feet from where that 10-foot line was. So with a 5-foot setback, there's no way a car would actually be able to park there even parallel. So that's what I measured today, and I thought it was interesting that in fact, when there is that opportunity with the 10 feet, in fact, it was being used that way. And keeping the alley clear, especially as density increases along here, and it is and it will continue to, then that will become really important. So the residents, the staff, and the developer have participated in an excellent interchange of information in an effort to get to where we are tonight. And coming into a public forum for a final vetting, it's a really good public process. And I really appreciate you guys encouraging us to come. And I really think it's a good opportunity for us to let you know what's going on out there and that it is a participatory process. So this is the position of the Fan Forest Hills Neighborhood Association Board. Thanks very much for listening to me this evening, and if there's any questions I can answer, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. No questions? Okay, so I don't think we have anybody speaking in opposition tonight. So we have 3 that are neither for nor against. Do we still have the caller on Zoom? So go ahead and introduce yourself, and you will have 5 minutes to discuss.
Bev?
We can move on to the next person in line until you get that dialed in. So we can move on to Diane Swiguth, excuse me.
Yeah, hi. I'm Diane Swiguth, and I live at 462 Fifth Street, right across from Safeway. And I'm here neither for or against the development, but what I am here tonight is to request that the DRC and/or the city change the alleyway between 4th and 5th and B and A and B, 4th and 5th and B and C from a two-way alleyway to a one-way alleyway, with the entrance from B and the exit then onto C, and to do so before the construction for this development starts. At this time, I did a count, a very rough count, and at this time, there's about 10 cars that use that alleyway for access to the residents. With that 15-unit condo building that's being constructed, that's right across from the post office, there's one underground garage there, but there'll be at least 15 more cars using that alleyway. And then with the 4 additional ones from the quadplex, that's going to be about 29 cars using that alleyway, needing to access their units. So to me, there's a big safety and alleyway usage concern there. Because the cars, if you've ever walked from, like me on 5th Street to go to the post office, there's cars always on the alleyway side of B. There's also the TriMet buses on the Safeway side of B. It's a very congested area right there between 4th and 5th with other cars coming and going. And if you have a car trying to get out of that alleyway onto B and a car wanting to go into that alleyway from B, you're going to have a little bit of a problem because that one car is going to have to stop and back up onto B, which then cause some problems for backup of other cars coming up B, and they usually travel pretty fast going up that way. So I think if the alleyway can be made into a one-way alleyway with, like I said, the entrance to the alleyway from B, the exit onto C, there's going to be a good, safety issue and usage issue concern. And the reason I was asking that it be done before the construction, because there's going to be the construction vehicles and the workers' vehicles there as well, so that if that alley, if it can be designated within a timely manner, I really appreciate it. So any questions or?
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
thank you.
That's I just have a couple comments. So I really appreciate you coming out and giving that insight and perspective. I don't think that we have the authority to push that through to make that a one lane from a two-way to a one lane designation as the Development Review Commission. But it is, you made your statement and it's now on public record, and you have a city attorney and you have a senior planner here as well.
And
So
if I could say one thing, because there is the one-way alley right behind the library. So we already have, a one-way alley in First Edition, and that was probably due to the amount of cars that would be parking in the library. So, yeah, I wasn't sure who to address it to, but I figured I'd address it here.
That's what the public forum is for, is to get your voice out there. and
I have a
speak.
question, and you may not be able to answer it, maybe the developer can by nodding. Is there a problem with that for the developer? Is there any pushback?
There's actually the DRC staff memo discusses from the city
Right.
engineer. So I would say while the developer may be open to that, I think it's something to talk about in deliberations and to keep in mind. So, and at that point, you could, if a condition is imposed, the applicant can come up and talk about whether or not they agree to the condition of approval and how to respond.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kat, did we have any success with the Zoom call? Go ahead and introduce yourself, please. And
Can you hear me?
yes, you are live.
Oh, good. Okay. My name is Bev Sokol. I live right next door to 547. I have lived next door to the property we're discussing for over 25 years. I have trimmed my side of the hedge and swept the endless debris from the huge Douglas fir trees that give our street shade in hot summer. I've also loved looking over the hedge to the trees in back at 547 and the big expanse of lawn that will all soon disappear. I'm grateful for the Doug firs and that the house is staying. But the quad units in back are being jammed into limited space, thus eliminating the yard behind the house altogether. The house will sit awkwardly on a chopped up lot. I know from experience that this development is largely a done deal. When I moved here, I was surrounded by small houses on all sides, the very reason I chose to buy my house in this neighborhood. One by one, tall townhouses have replaced the cottages. I have experienced development on all sides. I know from nonstop calls and letters wanting to buy my property that there is tremendous pressure to develop. I would like to ask for some considerations from a personal perspective. I know the noise and dirt, pounding and yelling and disruption that will soon come to me. It will rattle my windows and shake my 100-year foundation day in and day out for over a year. I would ask that you either keep the hedge, which we've already discussed, now brimming with birds and nests, intact as long as possible, forever would be nice, or build a sturdy 6-foot fence to replace the hedge. A temporary construction fence that can be carelessly moved accidentally is not a solution. The existing hedge with the internal fence is fundamental to keeping my dog safely inside my yard. I've relied on it for all these years. I am concerned about the roots of the large tree at the back corner of my lot over which the garage on your property sits, soon to be a dwelling. I would like to be kept informed of any decisions made when digging around it. I'd like to remind everyone that we don't all want the same things, and change is hard and unrelenting. I cherish my small old house with a yard big enough for a large tomato patch, lots of privacy, an enclosed yard for my dogs, and hedges and trees for the birds. All of it is a dwindling precious commodity. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, just a thought. I don't know if she heard the discussion that took place earlier about the fence along the north and south sides of the property proposed by the applicant.
Yeah, I think you can still hear me. I hope so. At one point, they talked about a 4-foot hedge. And although I have a huge concern about light because my house is so short and my windows go to almost to the ground on the side facing the development. And so too short a hedge would give me no privacy. I mean, a fence. I think a 6-foot fence is kind of a good compromise between privacy and I don't know. I mean, I've lived here so long with a hedge that it's impossible for me to picture where this fence will be exactly in terms of, you know, where exactly the lot line is because it's been invisible all these years. You know, I just picture it as being somewhere under that 7-foot wide hedge. So, yeah, so I think a 4-foot fence would definitely be too short, and a 6-foot is going to block some light, but is better all around, I think. But they talked about using just a, you know, like a cyclone temporary building fence, and that just wouldn't be secure enough.
Yeah, that
for a year.
That would only be for temporary during construction.
But construction could go on for a year, is what they've said in the past, I think.
Well, the tree mitigation has to be set in place prior to construction beginning and will remain all the way through until it's approved for removal throughout the construction process.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the fencing will be next to the last things done. prior to occupancy, I
Okay.
believe.
The wooden fence that's
Correct,
more,
yes.
of more permanent nature.
Yes, that's, they're discussing a 6-foot side obscuring fence.
Right.
Okay.
Any more questions, comments? No? Thank you, Ms. Sokol.
Thank you.
And then last we have Jesse Santa Maria.
Hello.
Hello. Go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Yes, name is Jesse Santa Maria. I live on 4th Street. I've lived there since '99. I've been here a little while. And I feel like it too. I'd like to say I know Bev quite well. We've been neighbors for quite a while. I've helped her out, she's helped me out. And the other neighbors that have been around there. I've also seen, all you have to really do is look at Google Maps in 2007 of our neighborhood in First Edition. And you'll see a lot of green and a lot of quaint homes with fences you don't really see because there's natural vegetation in between. And there's not a lot of ominous buildings looking down into other homes. That being said, I understand change is fine, progress. I'm right there with it. I love progressing. Filling every nook and cranny for the sake of ROI is starting to degrade our neighborhood in so many ways. The materials we use are cheaper. Hardy plank is cheap by the dozen as opposed to natural siding. Also, it's gotten a lot brighter. We have a lot of light pollution in the neighborhood as the development continues on. That in turn brings a lot of crows and a lot more noise in that regard. A lot of things we don't think about until 5, 10, 15 years later once the developers have come and gone and made their sales. The alleyway, I've been affected by every development that has happened. My gas line being cut, evacuation, our water being shut off, even for this point to cut in the hydrant for the new 15 unit. It's part of progress, I understand, but it's been nonstop. There's a lot of echo in the neighborhood now. As the buildings get taller, everything reverberates. They wouldn't know that because they don't live there. I'm not against it, I understand it. It's not that bad of looking building in so many ways. The alleyway is shrinking if the setback does get pushed forward. Yeah, the alleyway's changed a lot. Like I said, all you have to do is look at the neighborhood back then, and it's changed quite a bit. We've got a lot of blacktop, a lot of heat absorption. It's not a natural dirt. There's no percolation like there used to be in the runoffs. The grade of the alleyway has been changed through development to the point where it was flooding our property specifically until the city worked with us and we got it all hammered out. A lot of peripheral things we don't realize until it's built. And a lot of it's gonna be permanent and you can't change it unless it costs more money to change it. So I really implore everyone to do a lot better and be very more forethought and big picture and slow it down and really look at it as we move forward because First Edition is changing multiple editions now. And so we gotta get it right every time. Architect, landscapers, we have a lot more blowers. Every week we have 3 or 4 blowers where we never used to have any blowers. Everyone raked for that matter. Everything's cookie cutter now. So that uniqueness we're losing a little bit for the sake of the facade of what we want to be, what we want the city to look like, or what we want First Edition to look like. So I implore you all to really use us as a case study, the ones that have been hammered in by new developments. And but that being said, I've met a lot of nice people that live in these developments as well. I made good friends as well. It's just being better at the execution of it altogether, because it's going to stay there for a while. So there's going to be more echo when that building goes up. And that's fine because someone needs to make some money. And we'll probably meet some nice people that move into those places, right? But that being said, it's just, we need to really look at it as best as we can. I get hit by snow from the variances allowed by taller buildings to the point where it's damaged my roof every winter. It slides right off onto my building. I'm still dealing with that. I haven't figured it out yet. No one wants to own up to it yet. So a lot of things we don't think about to slow it down and really take a closer look at it. And I'm the quintessential case study on that, as I've been developed on all corners. So that being said, I love Bev. I wish her the best, and I want the best for the neighborhood as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. Anybody have any questions or comments? Hearing none, so we can move into DRC deliberations. Yeah, okay. So the public hearing is now closed and the DRC will begin its deliberations. No public comment is permitted during deliberations. Upon conclusion of deliberation, so I guess we shall begin.
I'll go. I think it was a very well thought out project, and I'm glad you went back with the neighbors and pivoted and saved the house and still gave us infill. I would like to suggest that the 6-foot site obscuring fence be implemented on the north and the south sides as requested. And I would request that somebody in the city look into making the alleyway a one-way alleyway. Her case was well put. And I know that in our notes, you came back with, well, there's only going to be 29 more cars per day, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes things just make sense, even though on paper or because of studies and charts and grids, it's approvable. So I think that's something that we should look at doing. And then my other question is, do the quadplexes don't have to have off-street parking, do they?
That is correct. No minimum parking
Right.
applies.
Because I went through that in the planning. So I would say in response to the neighbor's comment about change being so difficult, at least this developer gave a parking garage to each one of these units, which would offset more parking on 5th Street, which is going to happen because the existing house does not have any garage or off-street parking at this time. So I think it's well done, and if we have issues with change, we have to talk to your state representatives and land use planners, because what is happening in first edition is what the state is requiring and requesting. And since there are no CC&Rs that preclude multiple housing on these lots, like all of Westlake, that can't happen because we have CC&Rs that are grandfathered, that allow only single-family residences. You folks in first edition are the target.
If I may, I just want to follow up on the one-way alley. If I understand correctly, that alley continues on both sides. So would that be one way for the entire alley or just for that one block?
Yeah, there's no alley where Safeway is.
But going in the other direction?
Just be behind these. Yeah, exactly, the library alley. Turn right at the drop-off book. They have entire streets and cities that are one way. What's an alley? I mean, this is not rocket science.
Well, I'll leave that. But I do want to follow up on what you said, that I think the process of the neighborhood meetings, and I want to commend the applicant for listening to that at the first neighborhood meeting and making the changes and saving that house, which I think is really a real prize to still have here in Lake Oswego in the first edition. So I'm really glad to hear that the whole idea of neighborhood meetings actually can work.
I agree. I do appreciate that those two large Doug fir trees were also saved. And with the new building, I do believe that it complements the existing house that's there as well. So I think that, the design was well thought out. So I'm happy with it.
I would like to say that it seemed like everyone was working together. And rather than trying to, at times, it has been arguing about it here, it is done in a much more compassionate way to each party. This is an example of a good way to bring a development of this type into the neighborhood. And as Ellen mentioned, these are things that the state is mandating of the cities. And then it allows for a developer to then, look to do a development such as this. I agree with the gentleman that was speaking about changes in a neighborhood are hard, and feeling like it's going more towards, let's say, big city type of situation as opposed to a small neighborhood. I can see that up in Seattle as I drive around where my daughter lives. And I do think that we need to be compassionate of what we want for our Lake Oswego as we go forward in light of the requirements from the state. Oh, yeah.
Any other comments?
I just remind the commissioners about the removal of the conditions if somebody's going to make a motion.
I will make a motion. I again applaud this is the way the process should work. You hear all of us breathing a bit of a sigh of relief because all too frequently we don't see the process working the way that you all work together. And I'm sure that the planning department had the leadership on this, and I appreciate it. So with that said, I will move that we recommend approval of LU 24-0033 with the conditions recommended by staff. What? And the fence. And I will add, and the fence, yes.
I second that motion.
Fence says north-south.
North and south.
That motion, does that count the removal of conditions C5 and C5G? Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
I would hope so.
Okay.
Really quickly, before you move into decision-making, since you are imposing a condition of approval for a 6-foot site obscuring fence, we do need to ask the applicant if they are okay with that condition or if they want to consider it and possibly add some more evidence to the record in response.
Yep, that's fine.
The applicant appears to indicate that they are not opposed to that condition of approval.
And actually, just for the record, as the city attorney, I would say let the record reflect that the applicant has indicated that they are accepting of that condition of approval. Thank you.
Attorney. I just have one question before we move to vote on this, but as far as the alleyway, how is that as a separate issue from?
Yeah, my motion does not reference the alleyway at all. I understand that is not part of our process and that this is a decision for the city.
Great. So I just wanted to clarify for everybody in the room, they understand that. Okay. Okay, so admin, can you call the roll, please?
Sangre.
Aye.
O'Connor.
Aye.
Dews.
Aye.
Bates.
Aye.
Leek.
Aye.
Mino.
Aye.
Lundstrom.
Aye.
7-0.
Thank you, everybody. So now we'll move into item number 6 on the agenda. This will be schedule review and the management update.
Thank you, Commissioners. Johanna Hasty, Planning Manager for the City of Lake Oswego. I do not have any additional hearings scheduled for the DRC. I'm still getting used to readers. That's love aging. So for adoption of findings, we would be coming back on April 21st. Since there is nothing else on the agenda, you could consider meeting on Zoom at 6 p.m. like we have in times past. So I will leave that to the chair to put that out for the commission to consider.
I'm going to make a motion to do, you said April 21st?
Return with findings on April 21st? And,
Correct, yes, via Zoom.
okay, at 6 p.m.?
Yeah. Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you very much. Like I said, nothing else, no other hearings are on the schedule. We do have, working with Paul Espy, the staff liaison for the Historic Resources Advisory Board, we have nailed down May 5th as a good time for all of the commissioners to be presented a historic preservation presentation. Yes, no. Sorry, I think the caffeine is wearing off. I apologize. Anyway, we do have someone attending. I'm not quite sure how long the presentation is. We'll just meet at the normal 7 p.m. time in person. It probably won't be longer than half an hour, 45 minutes, but that'll give you a chance to ask questions of this expert. I do expect the staff, the HRAB staff liaison, to also attend, so he can talk a little bit about their process. Whether or not other members from HRAB are also attending is kind of unknown at this point, but it might. I'm hoping it'll be more of a discussion, like presentation, and then question and answer after that. The other thing I want to talk about tonight is, again, a reminder that we are looking at 3 of our commissioners being up for reappointment in June. And I did understand from Commissioner O'Connor that you haven't received a link from the city manager's office on how to apply, which I will try to rectify in the morning. But, and I'll talk about the tree code task force in just a minute. But that email that I sent out about the tree code task force does have a link to the BNC application request portal. So if you haven't turned in your reappointment request to the DRC, feel free to use that same portal. I also have a correction. I thought the application submittal time looked weird, so I gave you a different date. It actually is open for 3 weeks, so it's March 31st, it was last a couple of weeks ago, to May 13th. So you do have some time to work on your applications and consider whether or not you want to be reappointed or anything like that. So any questions about particular the DRC scheduling and reappointment submissions and all of that?
The Preservation Society is on May 5th?
May 5th, yes. Okay. Yeah. Another thing about the BNC reappointment process, typically they do have kind of an open house, usually in the evening, where people who are interested can come in and talk to members of a commission or board, the staff liaison. Due to a number of scheduling issues, they decided to cancel that this year. So the staff liaisons will be available, city manager's office will be available. I might tap one of you if you're interested to talk to someone who wants to delve a little bit more on what it's like to serve on the DRC. But that step is now off the schedule. Any questions about that? Okay. Going into the tree code task force, I did send out that email, and I do understand that there is some interest. And like I said in my email, I wanted to provide an opportunity, or at least give you all a chance to, not give. I am happy that you will have a chance tonight to talk about whether or not you want to make a coordinated effort. That is entirely up to you. I just, as the staff liaison, I want to make sure that everyone understands that anyone who does want to apply to be on the tree code task force is encouraged to. And like I said in my email, I understand only having one slot does make it feel a little competitive. The last time we did this, I think it was 43. It was 43 members on the task force, and that was never happening again. So with 12, we're trying to be very selective, or I should say the project manager, Jessica DeMalno, is trying to be very selective about who she's pulling and what sort of expertise is pulling in. And so if you are applying for the DRC position, I would ask that you remember that you are representing the DRC. Obviously, you're coming with your own experiences and expertise and professional all of your professional expertise, but really one of the main things that you're going to be doing is representing what it's like to be at the commission and hearing these tree appeals and hearing what's from the public, and then reporting back. You know, you're reporting both ways, back and forth between it. So just consider that when you're looking at applying to be on that DRC slot with the Tree Code Task Force. Okay, so again, that was all I had for management. If you do want to spend time discussing the task force, absolutely fine. I'm happy to stay and answer questions or just be here as a warm body watching. So.
Your mic's off.
Sorry, you've alluded to the fact that there will be, for those members of the DRC who are not on the task force, there's likely to be, or definitely will be, a meeting where this task force engages more broadly with DRC members. Is that going to happen?
So I know that they're still working through finding a consultant, and the consultant's going to be the one that puts together the public engagement kind of proposal, obviously with staff being, the city being the decision maker on that and can amend it. But I know that there are multiple points, besides the task force, there are multiple points where the boards and commissions will be, especially the ones that were noted in Jessica's email, like Sustainability Board, Parks and Natural Resources Advisory Board, and then the DRC. There will probably be, well, I know for a fact that they'll come to you with the code amendments that come out of this process, but that's kind of at the later end of it. But during the public engagement process, I know that there will be, that Jessica is discussing opportunities for you guys to engage. So beyond just having a representative on the task force. But I'm sorry, I don't have the details yet.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I apologize for a little confusion on this. I think I missed some things being out of the country, but it looked like you were looking for one person
Yes,
represent
so,
the DRC, but, and I know there's more people interested in that, and then tonight you're talking about maybe a DRC group talking. So
sorry,
what
yeah, so
what are you looking for?
I'm not looking for anything from you. Like I said at the beginning, is anyone who is interested in being on the task force, even though there's only one slot available, please do submit your applications for that, and they will be considered. But there is only one position available. There was a discussion, there was an allusion to possibly talking amongst yourselves to see if you wanted to have a coordinated approach to that submission process. That is entirely up to you. I have no thoughts on that either way. But that's what I'm talking about. Tonight, if you did want to discuss an organized approach to the submissions.
Yes, so possibly if there's only one spot available, that person might then coordinate with people that are interested in providing input so that one person from the DRC has everyone's thoughts.
Absolutely, that would be the point of having a DRC commissioner on the task force, is
Right.
that whoever was appointed would be a liaison basically back between the task force and the DRC.
Okay.
And again, it wouldn't be, I want to also keep in mind that whatever is happening on the task force is not something that's implemented at the DRC, but can, like a council update, it would be a task force update.
Okay.
Great. Well, thank you so much. He's not here, but I'll thank Councilman Wendland for showing up tonight and giving the report. I want to thank the city staff for their hard work and providing us with the information and feedback that we need so we can get through these meetings accordingly. I also want to thank the commissioners for taking the time out of their evening. I know this is all volunteer stuff, but You guys are all truly appreciated. I also want to welcome Attorney Osenak. Did I get it right? Yes, okay. And looking forward to working with you again, and let's adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.